Welcome to On the Line with Jim Pyne. I'm Jim Pyne. This episode is brought to you by PLS Aviation. Private aviation, perfectly executed. Now let's get on the line. So today on the line, we have a two-time national champions and offensive coordinator with Clemson. Last year's ACC Coach of the Year, 11-3 season with the Virginia Cavaliers. Head coach Tony Elliott. Coach, welcome to the show.
No, it's a privilege to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and first off, I gotta say, I went to Tech. I know you went to Clemson. We're ACC guys, right? That's the common thread here, obviously. But again, UVA, Virginia Tech, big rivalry, great. I always say to guys like Rondé Barber, I played with, Terry Kirby, Ray Roberts, Michael Husted, Tony Covington, Herman Moore, friends with Chris Slade. I mean, all great guys. We played in the NFL together, and we always were good friends. A lot of guys from the same area. But that 1 week a year, it's like, we're gonna get you guys. Here's the money. Let's do that. So, but very similar. A great rivalry, great thing to be part of. And you guys won last year. Congratulations, and had a great year. So, I guess, Coach, how do you feel coming off last year? Let me hear your take on last year going into this year.
Yeah, it's a new frontier for a lot of the folks here in the organization, but it's a familiar place for me. And it's something that I talked about from day one is chasing success is not the hard part, handling success is. And so really for me, it's a reset, right? And I fully understand that nothing carries over, right? Last year's victories don't win this year's battles, right? The stats don't carry over. And so really trying to help everybody understand that where you want to live, if you want to live in that upper echelon of consistency at a high level, it's pretty mundane, to be honest with you, right? You just figure out how to get better at the things that you do, right? You tweak certain processes, you add a few things, but really you got to stay committed to what your core values are and what your standards are, and then try and find a way to just elevate them a little bit more.
Right. No, you had an amazing run at Clemson as the coordinator there, and your history there. You were a player, you former walk-on, came on and team captain. Amazing success story. And I guess what did Clemson, two-time national champion. What did you? Great history, great success there. Obviously, you want to try to bring that here with the same methods. And your first few years at Virginia, you've been building the program, which. Mm-hmm. In today's world, nobody's patient, right? I had Doug Peterson, the former coach of the Eagles. He went Super Bowl, playoffs. He won losing season. They fired him. So it's like, the patience isn't there. But you're building something there. Hopefully, building something great for the whole future for a bunch. But what are the keys to that, Coach, in today's world?
I think the first thing, like from my perspective, is just staying true to your vision, and so. Coming to Virginia for me, it was a vision, right? I wanted to build something. I wanted to do it my way, whether right or wrong. I wanted to have the ability to do that. So I think that's where it starts from my perspective. And then just, a ton of appreciation and gratitude to the administration for believing in that same vision. So I think, first and foremost, if you want to step out and build something on your own, you got to have alignment. You got to align with people that believe in your vision. And then regardless of maybe the results that you're seeing in the moment, stay committed to laying the foundation the right way. Because, we all want to be sustainable, but in order to be sustainable, you got to be standing on something that's very solid. Right. And so the first couple of years for us, I know maybe the results didn't indicate, but we were laying a solid foundation, and I could see things that other people couldn't see because of my experience at Clemson. Right. So everybody talks about my time as the coordinator the last 7 years, but I was there for 4 seasons before that. So I was there during the times when Coach Sweeney was really laying the foundation and building for that historic run. So I got to see that. And so I was able to take a lot of that experience, and then I had to make some mistakes. Right. I think making mistakes along the way is part of it. Now it's the response to those mistakes. And I'm proud of the staff and kind of some of the changes that I had to make to myself personally for us to lay the foundation. And hopefully now we can be sustainable for years to come. Now, does that mean it's going to look exactly like it did last year? No. But really, you're building something to year in and year out just maximize the potential of the group that you have.
Right, no, great answer. So in last season, I looked at 4 overtime wins, right? 4 overtime games, 1 double overtime. I think you won 3 of them, lost one of them, right? So tough games, tight league, tight conference. I guess, talk to me about that. Going to overtime and how you prevailed 3 times, lost once.
Yeah, I think that you got to go back to the year before where we lost 5 games, by one possession late in the game, and so part of it was enduring and persevering through that adversity to really build the mental toughness and belief to win those games. Because you've played ball and played it at the highest level and been around it your whole life. The key is having the belief to be able to stay committed to your fundamentals when the pressure is the greatest, right? But you gotta go through some adversity, whether on the practice field or whether in a game, to build that mental toughness to be able to stay calm and believe. And that's really what it was. Even the game, that we lost, the guys still believe we had the ball in our hand, we're gonna go win the game. And I mean that's huge. Doesn't mean that you're automatically going to win, but if you don't have that belief, first and foremost, and that's part of that foundation, that we talked about, and it's been so awesome just to watch the transition of the belief within the building, and then now it's kind of seeping out to the athletic department, to the community, and hopefully it'll continue to grow because that's what's necessary for you to win close ball games. And college football is changing, right? And so I think our approach, and it naturally happened for us because we lost those 5 one-possession games the year before. But college football is changing in that I think you're going to have a lot more one-possession games going down to the wire in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings me back memories to put myself in there. My junior year at Virginia Tech, we went 2-8-1. We were winning 7 of those 8 games in the fourth quarter. Frank Beamer was the coach. And, things at the end of that season were dicey. Like, hey, there was talk, hey, is Coach going to be here or not? We all say, hey, keep Coach. We love Coach. And that next year we go 9-3, go to a bowl run, and we went to a bunch of bowls after. But to your point, that turning that mentality and that belief, and I say I've interviewed some people about it, but there was a guy, Phil Elmation was the coach, came in my senior year.
He was actually here last week.
Was he? Yeah, Phil. He's the best. He's an intense guy. He came in my senior year. We were in full pads 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Saturday was the game. 5 days a week, we were in full pads. So he hardened us up. The springtime, we had the mat drills going on it. He changed the culture, changed everything. That he was the right guy at the right time for Tech. So to you, what did you do, I guess, going into last year along those lines? Maybe 5 of those games you didn't win the year before, but this year you prevailed. Anything you did training the guys, like extra drills or emphasis of that in practice? What did you do?
I think in preseason camp, we did a really good job as a staff incorporating a lot more situational football in addition to our core installs, offense, defense, and special teams. And so we, as a team, we talked about and we used examples throughout from our own experiences, and then also other things that we found around college football and pro football, just to try and increase the football IQ and the intelligence piece of it. I think one of the biggest things that helped us is we had a core nucleus of guys that were all about changing the mindset. They were eager, they were hungry for it. And then 3 of the transfers that we brought in all had played in a national championship. And so they were able to validate, right, what these guys, the direction these guys were pulling and headed in. And I think it kind of took us over the top. And so the mixture of what we were doing from a belief standpoint, and then also validation from some guys and one guy won a national championship, the other 2 guys came up short, but they had been in that game. They were able to partner up with those guys to really help us solidify that belief.
That's great. And one thing I always ask, so you got to talk to Doug Peterson, Dan Quinn, the head coach of the Commanders, and Dan talked through his stuff, adversity and things. He's winning the Super Bowl. He lost the Super Bowl. Won as a coordinator. Twice lost to the Patriots, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, right? So legendary games, legendary stuff. You last year, you played North Carolina. You beat them in overtime. But talk to me about it, Coach. Listen, I know it's Virginia versus North Carolina, but it's you against Bill Belichick, right? I mean, and Doug Peterson admitted to me, he goes, before the Super Bowl playing them, he was scared. He was nervous. He was like, you're playing a legend. Because Dan referenced that, the level of coaching you're coaching against, it's one thing as players, we're out there hitting, I could beat this guy, physicality and all that stuff. Players got to make plays, but you as the coach, you're there. You know that guy's buttoned up over there situationally. He's not going to make many mistakes. So there's no situation that's going to happen that he hasn't seen. Talk to me about that and what you going into it, because that's a special game. You may,
That's right.
against Bill Belichick, because we don't know how long he's going to coach. But go
That's
ahead.
right. That's right. So it's a big game from that aspect. It's Carolina, Virginia. That's a big rivalry. So going into it, you could see their team was getting better. The record wasn't reflecting it, but they were playing better. You could see it on film. And so one, I had to make sure that the guys didn't lack any confidence without it becoming like arrogant. It's like, all right, boys, I've been there too. Right? So I know what's standing on the other sideline, but I've been there too. And so what we can't do first and foremost is we can't lose to ourselves because we're trying to beat them in particular. We got to make sure we stay fundamentally sound, committed to our core values, right? And then when we have an opportunity, we cannot miss the opportunity, because that's what, if you watch him over his career, he did an unbelievable job of, man, finding that break in the game and then taking advantage of it. You know what I'm saying? So we had to make sure that we had a heightened awareness, and it was a tough game. It was back and forth, and what it came down to is those 4 or 5 plays, and our guys found a way, right? And that's really what it comes down to, is finding a way, and you never know when that play's coming. Right, like that's so hard for the average fan to understand. They see the big plays, they see all the stuff that wows you, but we know, man, it's that ordinary punt return. And matter of fact, we just watched it, right? So we watched it because we were installing our punt return scheme yesterday, and it was a big return. And you know what it was? It was our backup punt returner that, instead of the ball being down on the 10-yard line, he pops like an 18, 20-yard return, and now here we're rolling. That leads us down the field. So really, it's trying not to elevate yourself to his level, but just stay focused on your job. And if you do your job well, then you have a chance to compete. And I think, and we had that same effect at Clemson when I was there, right? Like, people would lose to the logo. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like, they would lose to the logo before you walk out there. And so for me, it was our guys like, hey, this is a great opportunity. I know all of the outside noise, but like, it can't live rent free in our mind, right? We got to get it out, and we got to focus on what we do. And so that was really the focus, trying not to make it something bigger than what it was, and try not to make it personal, but also understand that, man, we got to make sure that we don't put any blood in the water, because if you put blood in the water, he's going to find it, and he's going to capitalize on it.
He's gonna get it. Yeah, situational football. Your backup punt returner flipped the field or whatever, flipped the
Yep.
got
Yep.
more yards, and that was the key play in the
The
game.
hidden
So
yards, the hidden yards game, right?
yeah,
And that's kind of like if you look at, because I reference the Patriots a lot, just in terms of, philosophically, how I would like to build the program. And they were a draft oriented, franchise. They got some marquee free agents along the way, but they were more draft oriented. They knew what they wanted. They knew that they were looking for fit. They had established a culture that would allow them to go and take a chance on maybe a fringe, high profile guy that might not fit, but their culture was strong enough to be able to force that guy to assimilate. So we talk about it a lot, that we want to find the right fit, right? That fits what we do, and that's how we build our roster.
right, no question. No one did it better for the longest time than him, building
Mm-hmm.
the team around guys, smart, tough football players, and again, not the sexiest guys, but he got good football players that fit into his program, his vision. And the funny thing, I coached for a few years in the NFL, and I was around when he was coaching. It was it was the 2020 deal. They said, boy, Bill Belichick, because I remember vividly, I was coaching for the Saints. We had a bunch of old, veteran coaches. Before the game, you kind of go out in pregame, shake hands with the other coaches, talk, kibitz. And like, I remember Bob Palcic, who's retired now, was a famous line coach. He's like, who are these guys? He's like, I don't even know who these guys. They're all young. And what Bill would do is hire a 20-year-old guy, work him 20 hours a day, and pay him $20,000. So he had all these young, grinding guys. They were in the lab working, and it worked
Mhm.
for him. And Bill controlled the show, and obviously very successful. But
Yeah.
legendary stuff to
Oh
do.
yeah.
So last year too, You played. I always have a thought on this. You played Duke.
Hmm.
You beat them in the regular season, 34-17, pretty handedly. Then you play in the championship game, you lose in overtime to them, right? You know, I always say the NFL is great with this because you play your division guys twice a year. It's very hard to beat somebody twice
It
in the
is
same
very
season.
hard.
And even the way you won 34-17, we're all human beings. Your guys and your team, yeah, we beat these guys. We're just going to do the same thing we did last time a few weeks ago, and we got this. We're going to be ACC champs. What did you learn there, Coach? What did they do differently, I guess, that kind of got you at the end?
I thought first and foremost, Manny and his staff had a great plan, and their plan was to grind it out, keep the ball away from us, right? And just which was different than how they had been winning, prior to. So I'm referencing the championship games. So throughout the season, man, they were putting up a bunch of points, man, airing the ball out, and you could tell that philosophically, man, they wanted to slow the game down, minimize possessions, right? Use the clock and not let us have a chance to get the ball and go be explosive, because it was more explosive plays in that first game, right? And really on the first drive there was a big explosive run that really kind of, I think, set the complexion for the game. The other thing that I learned was the guys were prepared to play, but they were probably a little bit more ready to play. I probably had them a little bit too fired up. So I might have pushed a little bit too hard in trying to focus on what you just mentioned in your question about, like, okay, we know it's hard to beat them twice. We can't use last game as an indicator. They're going to come to play, and I might have had the guys a little bit too aggressive to start. And you saw that, and we had a couple of penalties, that resulted in, there was one on the punt safe that resulted in, we went from 4th and 8 to 4th and 3. Now they go for it, they convert, they go score, right? And so it's the guys were so eager to go prove that they could do it again, as opposed to just being present in the moment and playing the game that's in front of you. And then now we're playing from behind and trying to play catch up, and they got a good strategy, a good plan. Then we make another critical mistake where we give up a fake punt. And so it was those. So that's really kind of what I learned from that one is as much as I knew what that experience would be like in Charlotte, I might have had the guys a little bit too amped up to go at first, and it cost us.
Sure. And that's funny. It made me think of something. I remember a guy, old coach Jerry Glanville, used to say, you coaching guys, and the old strength coach of mine would tell the story that you come in the game, guys get the playbooks out, they're looking at plays and all this stuff. Jerry Glanville's big thing was, guys, close the playbooks, turn the music up, get ready. Some guys are too in their head about the game plan. We're doing this, we're doing that. If you don't have it on game day, right, by then, you don't have the mental part down. It's emotions, it's that part. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a fine line. So now with the younger generation, everything is about stimulation, right? So they have to have 5 things going on at once just to function. So you go in the locker room before the game, man, the music's blaring, but we have a time period, right? So initially there's some quiet time for guys that need quiet time, and then we ramp it up, and like a perfect example is the Florida State game. Right, the Florida State game, we're playing at home, and I'm used to that rivalry, right? Like, because you had South Carolina, then you had Florida State. That was it at Clemson, right? And Florida State game always pretty much determined who would represent the division in the ACC championship for many years. And so, like, there was a certain level of intensity and focus that you had to have, because that game was gonna be faster than any other game of the year, just because of the athletes on the field, and then just the intensity. And so that's what I was looking for when we walked into the stadium to play like Florida State, right? Like, did the guys have that certain look in their eye? So when I saw it, I knew there was nothing that I needed to say. Then there's other games, like you come in and you're like, all right, hold on. Like, the look's not quite where it needs to be. Crank the music up. Let's try to create the energy. So like that's the mental gymnastics that you play nowadays as a coach, trying to figure out what that fine line is. But I'm also a believer too. Like, by the time you're done with your meetings on Friday, if they don't have what's going on in the playbook, it's almost too late.
Sure, sure.
You know.
Yeah, no, I got it. And then talking to Virginia Tech in the conference, a big rival, right? New coach, right? James Franklin. Tell me your thoughts on him. Penn State, very successful there. I guess didn't win the big one and kind of cost him. He lost the game at UCLA last year. I remember seeing that. But what are your thoughts on him? He seems to be a high energy guy, and he's coming
Yeah.
into Virginia Tech.
Ton of energy, unbelievable track record as a coach. Been fortunate to spend a little bit of time around him prior to him taking a job at Virginia Tech. We were both on the AFCA board for a little bit. Very, very intelligent, very, very high football IQ, understands the landscape from top to bottom. Man, he's relentless in what he does. You look what he did at Penn State. He kind of came in at a time where, it was probably not many people were excited about trying to take that job at that time, right? And then what did he do? He turned it around, and man, he had a stretch there that'll stand up against any coach at that time. And unfortunate the way it panned out, but excited. I'm excited because here's what I know that every champion, and I learned this when I was at Clemson, every champion needs a rival. Right? Like you need a rival, and you want a rival, and you want somebody to push you. Now we're gonna do it our way. Right, we're two different people, and I don't know all the ins and outs about how he does his program, and I would imagine that we have our own philosophies and ways of doing things, and we're not going to change because of what they're doing. But I'm excited because the first thing that we had to do, and I got to pay respect, right, where respect is due. It's a rivalry, but it hasn't been as competitive on the field over the years, right? With Tech winning, I believe, 18 out of the last 20. All right. So first of all, we had to learn how to compete in that game. And that was one thing that prior to Coach Franklin coming in that I recognized that we needed to change is our approach to what rivalry is all about. Right. And I can say that I felt that on the other side, they understood what it was. I think we needed to have a refresher. And it took us a couple years to change that mindset. And so I'm grateful that he's there because it's going to force us and everybody to be better. So.
Yeah, no question. A lot of energy from him. I don't know him well, but it seems like he's doing a good job. Yep. Recruiting, he seems like he's aggressive. He's pretty much took Penn State's class, I think, to Virginia Tech and took some guys as a quarterback. I grew up in Massachusetts as a quarterback from Massachusetts. I committed at 27 down to Virginia Tech. I think. Do you see that you guys are out there in the state of Virginia? The Tidewater place where Bruce Smith, Michael Vick came from. That's kind of the thing. And for years, the people don't know this too, and I hear this from my coaching circles. Clemson did a great job of coming into Virginia, that Tidewater area, and recruiting some really good players that historically had gone to Tech probably years before Virginia. And so you guys, Clemson came and took them. So hopefully you and Coach Franklin are cutting that off, saying, "Hey, Clemson,
we still got to keep them jokers out of the state of Virginia, right?" So and they had done a good job when he was at Penn State coming into Virginia through the relationships that they had, and when it took over the program, you could tell that both schools, right, were battling to just try to keep guys home. And North Carolina was doing a good job. You'd see Clemson come in, Penn State was coming in, and then like Ohio State was coming in after the big fish, in the state. And so a point of emphasis for me is and really it's a philosophy that we use with everything that we do is we want to be inside out. So have made a tremendous effort to try and reestablish the relationships, build the brand, right? I think for both institutions, like, you'd be surprised. Some of these guys don't know who Michael Vick is on my team. Like Michael Vick? Are you? As a matter of fact, I remember watching Michael Vick my sophomore year. We played in a bowl game, and man, they destroyed us when I was at Clemson. But you know Michael Vick? And so some of the names, oh my gosh, like the names that were household names, there just hadn't been those type of household names, right? And that was one of the things that we were fortunate at Clemson is that we had some household names. Like no matter where in the country, like you knew who Sammy Watkins was, you knew who Deshaun Watson was, you knew who Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence, and I apologize, I don't want to miss some of those household names, but that's one thing I noticed that neither school really had, right? And so it's like now what I'm trying to do is I want to make Cam Robinson a household name. right? Young man from the state of Virginia, stayed home, you know, and so and I'm sure, you know, Franklin wants to do the same thing with Brink, because you talked about Bruce Smith and Michael Vick, and man, there's a ton of Tyrod Taylor and, you know, bunch of other guys, but there just hadn't been that. And then recruiting changed too, right? So with the internet and the expansion of territories, you know, it became less about, man, really staying home. It was more like, hey, man, I can go anywhere. And so where's the hottest name? And that's kind of what helped those other schools get into the state.
Yeah, and you mentioned recruiting change. I had Anthony McFarland, Booger McFarland on, and you know, he went to LSU because he lived 2 hours away. He could drive. The parents didn't have any money. He said that, you know, that made sense to stay home so my parents and family could come see me. Whereas today's guys, right? I mean, NIL. That's why guys, you know, they come into Florida schools, the Big Ten, they're going everywhere. All the conferences going buying guys, and so the money's kind of changed how the recruiting goes a little bit. And so I guess, Coach, here's the thing too. Like you had walked on at Clemson, then you became a captain, right? I'm sure you had to deal with some adversity, some tough things. I know you growing up, you lost your mom, I believe at 9. That's an adverse situation, right? How do you handle adversity? What, you know, you've dealt with it in your life. You're going to deal with it again, right? Adversity, we all deal with it. But if someone's listening, hey, how does Tony Elliott handle adversity? What do you tell yourself, and what do you do?
Yeah. So I borrowed this line from James Trapp, who was the team chaplain at Clemson for many years when I first got there. Great and pro football player, track athlete, you know. And he said that adversity is the companion to the champion and the enemy to the weak. And so throughout the course of my life, I've learned, right, to embrace that concept and that mindset that adversity is necessary for growth. And really, in our game, the game of football, man, the only way you get better is it's got to hurt. Somewhere, whether it's in the weight room or on the field, it's got to hurt. There's adversity, but you grow. And so that's how I embrace it. That doesn't mean that when it comes, like, I have to find joy in it, because that's what the good book instructs us to do. And that's my life verse from the book of James. So I try to find the joy in the adversity, because I know there's growth, and really just keep the right attitude, and that's really all you control. And life is 90% what happens to you. You know what I'm saying? But it's all about how you, and 10%. I mean, it's really, what is it, 90-10? It's all about how you respond. You know what I'm saying? Sure. That matters. So that's the approach that I take. I want to focus on not running from it and hitting it head on, and then being anxious and looking forward to the growth. And I think that's what we often forget a lot of times when adversity comes, because if we look at our lives and we're honest with ourselves, man, the person that we are and the successes that we had usually were birthed in an adverse situation, right? We learned something in an adverse situation that prepared us to maximize the moment that led to success. And we want to skip that sometimes. We just want to fast forward and say, all right, here's the adversity. I don't want to deal with all that comes with it. Just give me the success on the other side. But no, it's really the journey. It's the growth that takes place.
Absolutely. And I guess transition, you know, people listening and stuff, executives, CEOs, but players, former players, NFL, football guys, college guys, transitions, a lot of transition now in college sports, right? With the portal guys, sometimes a transition every year, which is not good. But how do you advise and coach your guys or anybody? Hey, you got to, it's kind of like adversity, but transition. You're a football player today now. Like you were an engineer, then you went to worked at Michelin for a couple of years, right? Then you got into coaching. So you got to transition. Is this something you tell yourself, or you were taught that this is how you got to kind of reinvent yourself each time, new jobs, new roles, that type of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I was very fortunate in my coaching career not to have a ton of transition, right? I was at Clemson for 11 years, and then only two stops prior to that. I then came here to UVA. You know, transition is a part of life. You know, change is a part of life. I think you adapt, right? But you try to adapt without losing your tether to your core. And that's what I think is the challenge now, is because there is a ton of transition, and there's also a lot that comes with it, right? There's a lot of the superficial attached to the transition that you can easily, in the process of transition, lose sight of where you're headed, lose sight of what's most important to you, and then you lose your tether to who you are. And instead of it becoming transition, now you're wandering. Now you're out there kind of just you don't know where you're headed. And that's the worst thing, right? Like you don't want to you want to kind of you don't want to take too many detours. I think everybody's going to have some detours along the journey of life, but you don't want to just keep having detour after detour after detour. And so that's how I try to coach my guys. And then in terms of this program, the way that I approach it is that we have to adapt or we become extinct, right? But we don't have to do what everybody else does, right? We can adapt our way in a way that fits our organization so that we don't lose sight of what the core of our responsibility is. And you coached, and so you know that you coach because you love the game, you love the people that play the game, and you want to pour into their lives and try to help them maximize the time that they have associated with the game, right? So that is servant leadership. And so at the end of the day, regardless of what's happening in the industry, that doesn't mean that you can't still run your organization with the approach of servant leadership. Right? Now, do you have to adapt to function in the business? Yes, you do. But you can adapt in a way that you incorporate the aspects of the business that align with how you truly view what your organization is all about.
Sure, sure. Good, great answer. Last two questions, Coach. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Ooh, the best advice. Okay, so I'll do that from a coaching perspective because there may be some young coaches that are listening. The best advice that I got was from Coach Sweeney, and in terms of me becoming a head coach, he said, "I want you to be an old head coach," and I didn't know what that meant at first. Like an old head coach, but what he meant was in your eagerness, right, and your desire to accomplish a goal, like make sure that it's the right time, it's the right fit, so that it truly gives you an opportunity to develop into an old coach and not just take a job to take a job because you can take the right job that's going to help develop you and prepare you and put you in a position to be an old coach. And then another thing that he told me is he said, I don't want to see you move your family to move your family, right? I don't want to see you go take a job just to go get another job. Man, take the job that you believe you can become an old head coach and you don't have to move your family. You can be hunkered down and be invested. And so that really is what helped me to develop the patience to try and find the right, situation for me. Because I tell this to my players, I tell this to the staff. Man, there's many facets to Tony Elliott, right? Like, yes, there's a big nerd in me, right? I got the credentials academically to prove that, right? I was an engineering student while playing, so like I like school, like I,
Yeah.
I was I was intrigued by that. Like I'm a spiritual individual. Like I like learning from nature, right? I'm a competitor. Like I'm a fierce competitor. Like the adversity in my life is what helped me develop that passion to compete, right? And I've had to learn how to like temper that a little bit. A lot of times people don't get to see that side of me because like in my job I'm leading people, so there's times where I have to be calm and collected, but there's times on the practice field that it comes out. So I'm a fierce competitor, right? I do have a passion for helping others try to maximize their potential. So I wanted to find a place where like I resonated with everything about it, if that makes
Sure.
sense. But
Yeah.
I think that advice is what helped me to develop the patience to be able to be secure in myself and who I am, and then go try to find me a place where it fit me and I fit the place, so that I can not have to move my family and hopefully be successful enough to be an old coach.
Being an old coach. No, that's a great answer. I guess. And last question, I always ask this one. 30, 40, 50 years from now, kids don't give you former teammates. How do you want people to remember you? What do you say about, hey, Tony Elliott? When your name comes up, what do you want? What do you want? What do you hope they say?
I just hope they say he's a good man. Like I said, they say he was a good man, right? That to be honest with you is really what has driven me my whole life. Because after you referenced my mom passing away when I was 9 in a tragic car accident, and I made a vow, And in that vow, there was two components. The first one was, Mom, I'm gonna make you proud. I didn't know how. I'm 9 years old. I don't know what that looks like. I'm gonna make you proud, and I'm gonna take care of my little sister. And that drove me for a very, very long time. And I wandered and I got off track, at times. But at the end of the day, I always came back to, man, everything that I do, I just want to make my mom proud. And for me, like, I won't know that until the end, right? When I see her again. So I'm driven by that, but I hope that, and I've learned because for a while it was like, well, if I accumulate a bunch of stuff and I accomplish a bunch of things, then you know what? My mom would be proud of that. But then as I've, transitioned into a leadership role and, leading young men and being a part of their journey and having relationships with their family, you learn that really all your mom wants is for you to be a good man, right? To just be a good man, and that's really what I want them to say. Because funny thing is that we were having a conversation. Side note, I was having a conversation with some of my wideouts, and wideout said, "All right, coach, give me your top three receivers of all time in college football." And so I start like rattling off names. They have no idea who they are, right? And then they started talking stats, and I'm like, boys, I can't even remember the stats from my time at Clemson. Like I have no idea what they are. And so if that's all that people say about me is they want to rattle off stats or wins and losses, then, I haven't done a good job impacting the people that I'm around. And I want my sons to say, I'm not a perfect man, not a perfect man, but just a good man.
That's right. Oh, that's great. That's great stuff, Coach. And that's awesome. Thank you so much for being on, and thank you for the time. And hey, best of luck this season. I hope you win every game, maybe except for one. Maybe it's a tie or whatever. But yeah, good luck to big things. It's not good for Virginia Tech that you're there at Virginia, but it's good for Virginia, and you're big things ahead, and look forward to it. So we'll have you on again, and I really appreciate it, Coach.
No, I appreciate you, and I tell you, what I'm envisioning? I'm envisioning that it's us and Tech, undefeated, going into that last game of the season, right, with a shot to play for a championship, right? So
Yeah,
that's what I'm envisioning, and so I'm grateful that you gave me this opportunity. Man, it speaks volumes of you to want me to be a part of your podcast. So, man, I wish you much success as you continue to use this platform to impact people. And, man, best of luck to your boys. Man, I can tell from our opening conversation, man, you're a proud dad that's invested a lot in your boys. And so I wish them the best.
yeah. Thank you. Same to you. All the best, Coach. We'll talk soon. Take care.
All right. Talk to you later.
See you.
All right.